Next thing that we want to talk about is New York congestion pricing. Now, I had explained to you guys a while ago that New York congestion pricing was going to go into effect. And what that basically was if you were driving into Manhattan, not even New York congestion pricing, but Manhattan congestion pricing. If you were driving into Manhattan, then you were now going to be charged extra, as though the people over in New York aren't already taxed enough and they don't have enough money that's going into government coffers. But if you were going into Manhattan, that you were going to be charged an additional fee, and they were calling it congestion pricing. All it is another tax. That's it. You get taxed to death. But without further ado, New York governor is now saying that she's canceling or indefinitely pausing congestion pricing. And I have an idea as to why, but let's deep dive into it. Make sure y'all vote on the chat, on the poll. I'm going to be reading that super chat shortly. I love y'all. I appreciate it. Let's get to it.
Well, this is a major development. Congestion pricing will not go into effect here in New York City at the end of this month after all. New York's Governor Kathy Hochul announced today that this first of its kind initiative is postponed indefinitely. Now, on this map, you see the area affected. Under the plan, most drivers would have to pay $15 to enter Manhattan at or below 60th Street during peak hours. The governor says the policy's goal was to reduce traffic and emissions, as well as raise money for improvements to the transit system. She released a video statement earlier about her economic concerns.
So after careful consideration, I have come to the difficult decision that implementing the planned congestion pricing system risks too many unintended consequences for New Yorkers at this time. For that reason, I have directed the MTA to indefinitely pause the program.
Let's bring in CBS News New York reporter Lisa Rosner. She's outside of the governor's office here in New York City with more on this. There was such an effort and a push to get this done. Why is the governor reversing course?
Errol, that's a good question. So sources tell CBS 2 part of the reason here is politics, and then the other reason, which she stated pretty clearly in the video, is economics. We've seen inflation, and we see that businesses here in Midtown Manhattan are still struggling to come back from the pandemic. On the side of the politics, what sources are telling us is that this is tied to Democrats needing to win over some seats in the House in the upcoming election. And more polls have been showing that people in areas like Long Island and upstate New York were not supporting this plan.
And I remember as this...
So let's stop there. What did I tell y'all when I first started this show? Shout out to Les. I'm definitely going to be reading that super chat shortly. What did I tell y'all when I first started this show? No matter what we talk about, right? Because people just want you to talk about stocks and all of that stuff. And if you want to get that, we live streaming probably Sunday or Monday. And one of the beautiful things that we'll be able to do is Stock Club. As a matter of fact, our next Stock Club is next Monday. We're doing Stock Club this Monday, upcoming. And it's going to be pretty much right after the show. Inside of the Patreon. So if y'all not bag chasers, if you're not a part of the Patreon and you're missing out on all of these money tips, then you definitely want to do so, because I break it down all the way down to a C student's perspective so that you guys are not completely confused and you understand exactly what you're investing in. I'm not here to manage your money. I don't manage anybody's money. I don't take any money from anybody. But what I do is I teach you how to fish for yourself. So we're going to do Stock Club this upcoming Monday, right after the Millionaire Morning Show, and we're going to get it popping, all right? But I always tell y'all, because people always want me to only talk about money. No, we need to talk about everything, because as I explained in Stock Club, in the most recent Stock Club, that every single thing that we do, especially when it comes to politics, news, rumors, cities, anything that happens throughout these streets, it all comes back down to the money. It all comes back down to the money. And how does it come back down to the money? How does politics come back down to the money? Well, they're going to say, well, you know, it's inflation and the people are suffering too much. Listen, if you really cared about the people, then you would lower exactly what they're being taxed inside of New York anyway and make it more conducive for businesses to be able to thrive there. You would limit the amount of migrants that's coming over into to New York, that you're then spending an egregious amount of money per migrant inside of these hotels, and you're not really releasing the real budget and the real money that's really being spent on these migrants. You wouldn't be making yourself a sanctuary city, and instead you would be supporting what's happening in New York. But what's really happening is they're doing it because of this upcoming election. So they never going to say that outwardly, right? You got to be able to read between the lines. You got to be able to read between the lines. They're never going to say it outwardly. They're going to say, hey, listen, we care about the people. In reality, they really trying to win some more seats. In reality, they're going to do this, and I guarantee you, I'm going to revisit this. I'm going to timestamp it. But what I'm telling you is that they are going to revisit this, and after the election, they're going to do exactly what they said that they was going to do, and that's why they said indefinitely, and we're pausing it. They said they're pausing it indefinitely. So after the election, because I'm sure that a phone call probably came in from Biden, it was like, hey, man, you're making it look crazy out here. We're trying to win some more seats, all of this stuff. After the election, this congestion pricing is going right into effect. It's absolutely going to happen. Let me pivot for a minute, and I want y'all to hear her actual speech, because we don't just want to go based off of the news. We don't want to hear what all of them got to say. We want to get that as a summary, but we definitely want to show you the actual speech of what she said when it came to what's best for the people over in New York.
New Yorkers have seen the price of groceries alone go up an average of 23%. Think about the cost of a dozen eggs, more than doubling from $1.20 to $2.86 all over our country.
They don't care about you, bro.
Housing prices have increased by 17%. The cost of childcare has gone up almost 20%. And the strain on working and middle-class families is just too much.
Sound like a robot.
That's why, since becoming your governor, one of my priorities has been...
Politicians love to promote themselves. They always act like that they're doing something on behalf of the people, but in reality, it's an opportunity for them to continue to promote themselves. That's why, since becoming your governor, I've made sure that I kept in mind what was going on with the people. Man, shut that up, bro.
...been to address affordability and keep and put more money back in your pockets.
Cap.
That's why I fought to raise the minimum wage and tie it to inflation, doubled tuition assistance, held a line on income taxes, and invested billions in affordable childcare. Our policies must support
migrants,
everyday New Yorkers, like our small business people, police officers, firefighters, teachers, healthcare workers, truck drivers, and not add to their financial burdens. So let's talk about congestion pricing, which would impose a $15 charge on cars entering Midtown and below, beginning in just a few weeks. Now, it was enacted 5 years ago to achieve two essential goals: reduce traffic and emissions in New York City and provide a funding stream for much needed.
So they're implementing a new tax to prevent congestion in New York City. Yo, I need to go and get my my Yoda cap. Give me a second.
Needed capital investments in public transit. It was also enacted in a pre-pandemic period, where workers were in the office 5 days a week, crime was at record lows, and tourism was at record highs. Circumstances have changed, and we must respond to the facts on the ground, not from the rhetoric from 5 years ago. So after careful consideration, I have come to the difficult decision that implementing the planned congestion pricing system risks too many unintended consequences
who wrote this speech
for
for her,
New Yorkers
Latrell?
at this
I'm going to read
time.
that super chat shortly.
For that reason, I have directed the MTA to indefinitely pause the program. Now, I want to be clear.
Now, let me tell you how this affects the people that's over there in these other offices, like, Eric Adams and all of that. Now, what they are trying to do, or what they're going to be forced to do, is to manage their budget a little bit differently, because I'm not sure how much they factored this new tax into what their new revenue stream is. So, everything flows downhill, right? Because she's going to promote herself and she's going to say, well, I care about the people, and it's important for us to make sure that I take into consideration inflation and all of this stuff. Here's the thing. In reality, she's basically saying, Everybody else that was dependent on this new revenue stream that y'all had already factored into y'all budget, that's your problem now. She don't got to manage that. She ain't got to deal with that. She ain't got to worry about that. That's everybody else's problem. We not worried about any of that. And this is one of the difficulties. This is why you see places like New York and California, and they're never going to reduce taxes. They're never going to say, hey, we're going to lower the tax bracket. It takes somebody transformational, honestly, and I'm just going to be honest with you. It takes somebody like a Trump to go in and say, hey, man, y'all need to cut taxes. We cutting taxes. And then people going to complain, oh, man, that only affects the rich. No, listen, taxation without representation is purely theft. Taxation without representation is purely theft. And you never, ever see them reduce taxes. I never see anybody say, hey, man, we're going to lower your tax burden or whatever. They say, hey, man, we're going to put more money inside of taking care of your children, or we're going to give you a new tax credit. But they never truly remove it or lower the tax rate for you as an individual. They just change the brackets. They move some money around. They say tax the rich. It never, ever goes down. It never, ever goes down. Ever.
My team worked into the final hours to find a way to implement this because the goals of congestion pricing in terms of reducing traffic and pollution are important. But hard-working New Yorkers are getting hammered on costs. And they and the economic vitality of our city must be protected. We cannot ignore the facts. Literally the year after the enactment of the law, New York City was the epicenter of the pandemic. It was the first and hardest hit of all U.S. cities. Many predicted New York would not recover. Well, thanks to hard-working and committed New Yorkers, those doomsayers have been proven wrong. Well, while our recovery has been stronger and swifter than anyone imagined, it is by no means complete. And we cannot afford to undercut this momentum, and I won't allow this delicate recovery to be jeopardized. Anyone walking through Midtown Manhattan or riding the subway, they've seen it. Streets and train cars are crowded Tuesday to Thursday, but much less so on Monday and Friday. Office attendance is down compared to before the pandemic, with many workers only commuting in 2 or 3 days a week at most. And Manhattan currently has a commercial vacancy rate of over 20%. This reduction in foot traffic has had an enormous ripple effect, with fewer people patronizing restaurants, delis, and dry cleaners. The idea behind congestion pricing is that it'll encourage many current drivers to shift to public transit. But there is a third possibility that now poses a greater threat than it did at the program's inception. Drivers can now choose to stay home altogether, telling employers they need to work fully remote again, or they might just change their patterns and skip the visits to the city on a Saturday with their family or going out to a theater or a restaurant. At a time when inflation is still cutting into New Yorkers' hard-earned wages, the concern is that many would do exactly that, or that one more added cost would make residents rethink living or working here altogether, hurting our recovery even more.
Listen, this is what it comes down to. Let's skip the BS. Let's bypass the pleasantries. Let's just get straight to business, right? What it comes down to is it's an election year. And I've never, ever seen any politician pass up a new revenue stream in order for them to make themselves look good or plug some budget holes or to prevent some layoffs or whatever in order for them to be able to get reelected. I've never seen, and this is just me personally in my lifetime as to what I can remember, I've never, ever seen a politician do what's in the best interest of the people unless it's an election year. That's a fact. Raheem, I'm rocking with you. I've never, ever seen. Now, I'm not saying that congestion pricing, the extra taxes ever should have been implemented in the first place. I'm telling you that the reasons, see, it's the why behind why a lot of these politicians do what they do. The reasons as to why she's doing what she's doing is disingenuous, which is one of the reasons why I don't like most politicians. I think that there are some good politicians out there. I absolutely think that they are. But when I see career politicians out here pandering during an election year, trying to act like they're doing it for the people instead of really doing it, because they had over 40, look, you had a long time well over 4 years to determine whether or not this was actually going to make sense for the people. So you telling me in the 11th hour during an election year that you decided at the final moment, hey man, this is not going to really happen. We're going to do this on the behalf of the people. That's when you announce it? BS. I call Bush. I call Bush. 1,000% calling it. I ain't going for this nonsense, and neither should y'all. Shout out.